The Bengals started fast, but it wasn't enough to beat the Chiefs. They go down 25-17 in Kansas City. Hi again, everyone, and welcome into Cincinnati Bengals Talk. I'm James Erpine of allbengals.com. And unfortunately, the Bengals playoff hopes, well, they've come to an end, and they were close. They were close. They played a game that I kind of expected them to play, which was coming out disciplined, certainly on offense. I thought Jake Browning would bounce back, and he did that. He played really well, specifically in the first half when the Bengals first they take the opening possession over 8 minutes, go downfield. They have to settle for a field goal, but instantly I was like, ooh, you have my attention. And they not only did that, but then they scored on back-to-back possessions. They take a 17-7 lead. The defense, which can't stop a nosebleed, at least forced a turnover. Trey Hendrickson with the strip sack on Patrick Mahomes. And you see it, and it's 17-7, and you're like, okay, now this defense needs to find a way to get stops. And spoiler alert, they forced one punt all game long. They gave up 6 field goals, which you could look at it one way, which is the fact that this defense didn't give up a bunch of touchdowns, which fine, it kept them in the game. 2, and it's something I've talked about, and if you watch Cincinnati Bengals talk or followed at all this season, points matter. And at some point, you can't say, all right, bend but don't break. And this Bengals team, they just could not get off the field. This defense could not get off the field. The offense came back down to earth, which they were always going to do. And when you mix those two things together, you get what we saw in the second half, which was an offense that couldn't really move the ball against a good defense. And this Bengals defense couldn't force any turnovers, couldn't do anything to give the offense the momentum that they needed to beat a team in the Chiefs that I think are built to win games like this, where they can run between the tackles. Isaiah Pacheco in the first half had 5 attempts, which was kind of ridiculous by Andy Reid because he had 88 yards. Anytime they ran the ball with Pacheco, it was going for huge gains. I can't believe they only ran it 5 times. And yet you look up and you have the lead at halftime and you're feeling pretty good about it. And give the defense credit for this. Coming out of the half, they got to stop. They forced a 3 and out, and that was their lone punt of the game. The Bengals offense goes downfield, drives 75 yards. They get to the Chiefs 6-yard line, and it's 4th and 1. And this will be the play that a lot of people talk about. I love this play. Decision, not the play, just to be clear. I love this decision. I said that. I'm like, no, that's not right. No, you didn't. I love the decision to go for it on 4th and 1 because they look at it. They weren't in scoring range the rest of the game. Their defense got beat the rest of the game. Zach was right to go for it. What I think happened is they gave Browning multiple plays. I would imagine that's usually what they do in that situation. And I'm not sure if he checked. I know he went to his helmet there. I'm not sure if he checked to the run or stuck with the run, but obviously sticking with the run was the wrong call, or running the ball was the wrong call. Mixon gets tackled for a 3-yard loss. And that's kind of it. That's where this team kind of faltered and fell on its head, or whatever you want to say. And it sucks, but that's where they're at. That's where they were at during the entire second half, essentially. And they had to punt 3 straight times coming out of that drive. And the Chiefs just inched closer and closer and closer. I'll read the possessions in the second half. The Chiefs, they have to punt on their first possession, and then they drive 77 yards for a field goal, and then they drive 85 yards for a field goal, and they drive 39 yards for a field goal, and then they drive 9 yards for a field goal. That can't happen. The 9 yards was after a long punt return. Speaking of punts, the Bengals, they had to punt 3 straight times after that turnover on downs, and then turn it over on downs at the end of the game. The punter problem is a very real problem. Brad Robbins will have competition next year. There is no doubt about that. I'm not saying they cut him, but punter is a topic that we will certainly discuss this offseason. Other offseason topics, this defense, I'm not sure what's going on up front, but man, did they lose up front today. And I know a lot of people keep talking about the safeties, and I get it because it wasn't perfect. By the way, Dax Hill had a really nice tackle on Isaiah Pacheco in the open field. Chidobe Awuzie with a nice tackle on Rashee Rice on 3rd and 8, 7-yard gain. Like, this defensive backs, it's not like they gave up a ton of huge downfield plays, but they just got beat up in the trenches. And so that will certainly be a topic for this defense. The linebackers certainly left something to be desired. They forced a field goal, but on that 4th and 1, which I don't know why that needed to be reviewed. It was weird they changed it on the field, but Zach Taylor with a successful challenge, and it's 4th and 1. I don't know how Patrick Mahomes gets past Jermaine Pratt, shakes him, and then is able to run through Sam Hubbard. Those are your two veterans. Those are two guys you want out there. That's not Dax Hill. That's not Nick Scott. That's not Jordan Battle. That's not any of these guys taking heat from the majority of Bengals fans right now, and you don't get the stop. Ultimately, they did, and they held serve and forced a field goal, but it was too much. And that's why before the game, I picked the Chiefs. I thought the Bengals would come out. I thought they would give the Chiefs a game, but it's really, really hard to win at Arrowhead. And they played turnover free, but they just didn't have enough. Didn't have enough juice on offense. And on defense, you couldn't get stops. You couldn't get those opportunistic turnovers. And part of it was because the Chiefs, they realized that they could just bully the Bengals in the trenches. They didn't need to force the ball downfield or push the ball downfield. And you look at it, it's not like Patrick Mahomes had a huge game with who he was targeting. Rashee Rice had the long 67-yarder, which was a insane play that shouldn't have happened, and he got past Cam Taylor-Britt. But okay, so you have the one explosive there. But outside of that, Watson had 41 yards, Justin Watson. Pacheco was their third leading receiver, a running back. After that, it was Noah Gray with 17 yards, Travis Kelce with 16 yards on 3 catches. I mean, you kind of did your job against these weapons outside of that one explosive to Rice. But it was Pacheco in that ground game, averaging 7.2 yards per carry, had a 37-yard run, also had a 21-yard reception. That's the difference in the game. And so Jake Browning finished the game. He was all right, 19 of 33, 197. The numbers look way worse because he got sacked 3 times on that final possession. And Tony Romo brought this up, and I get it. People are mixed on him, but this is a good point. When the Chiefs know you have to throw it, you're up 8. They know that the Bengals are going to throw it to try to get back in the game. It makes it really tough. And you saw that on that final possession. Overall, Jamar Chase led with 3 receptions for 41 yards, had the 24-yarder on 3rd down. That's part of this. The Bengals started great on 3rd down. They were 4 for 5 on 3rd downs. Of their first 5 third downs, the one was they had to settle for a field goal. I thought they played pretty darn well. You know, Joe Mixon, I thought, had his moments, had a 14-yard run, finished with 65 yards rushing. Jake Browning with 32 yards rushing. His legs early were a weapon that caught the Chiefs off guard, but the Chiefs adjusted. And when you're a flawed offense and you have, and I'm not trying to be mean to Jake Browning, but he left some throws out there, like the Trenton Irwin throw on 3rd and 27 late in the game. He has to hurry it up just a little bit because Chris Jones is bearing down on him. But that's a throw that you would think that Joe Burrow would make, right? That Patrick Mahomes, you would expect him to make. It's hard to ask Jake Browning to make those. And that's why when you get in those situations on the road against the Chiefs, it's really hard to dig your way out of them. I do want to give the Bengals credit, though, because they did fight back. And they fought back when it was 4th and 18. And Jake Browning steps up and finds Tyler Boyd for a 23-yard gain. It wasn't enough. It's frustrating. I get it. But overall, I think that this Bengals team played hard. I think that the Jamar Chase comments earlier this week were trying to get into the Chiefs' heads, and it worked. He drew a pass interference penalty that led to a touchdown. He was able to get those guys going a little bit. At the same time, that has a shelf life, and it is hard to get open. And T. Higgins gets nicked up in the first half. He was able to return. Unfortunately, didn't have any catches after returning to the game. And so it makes it tough. It makes it tough. This Bengals team, they're going to miss the playoffs for the first time since 2020. It sucks. They're 8-8 on the year, and we're going to have you covered. No doubt about it. Even though it's a new year, happy new year to each and every one of you. We're going to have you covered all throughout this week, certainly going into the Battle of Ohio, which could be a unique game next week as the Bengals try to finish with a winning record. And then it's full steam ahead with the offseason. If you're familiar with Cincinnati Bengals talk, you know we do not take an offseason. We do not take breaks, and we will have you covered all throughout the offseason. So for Andrew Fox-Miller, our channel coordinator, and my co-host of Enter the Jungle, which will be out every single week now, a new show right here on CBT. We'll have some more news on that, by the way, about where that's going to be aired very, very soon. Until then, have a happy new year. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for supporting the channel. have a cold one. And yeah, this Bengals season certainly wasn't what any of us expected, but they fought hard tonight in Kansas City. For Andrew, I'm James Rapien. Thank you so much for watching Cincinnati Bengals Talk.